You figured out a way to hack the system, education, and the growth mindset. People don't think about that.
Entrepreneurial journey. It's never as good as it seems, and it's never as bad as it seems. The entrepreneurial trigger was when I was 10. It was all about creating something, create a plan, and then you gotta deliver. It's a way that you live out who you've been created to be, which is from the heart. How do I care for others? And then you come together relationally, deeply relationally. Building this repeatable model dramatically changed the business. In 10 years, we grew the business 1,400%.
Wow.
Now, the question is, why?
There's a lot of people that think that to create wealth, you need a lot of fancy degrees. Tell us about your relationship with public schooling.
When I was in the 4th grade, I got like 45 straight A's. And then by the time I was in the 7th grade, I was like a D student. And so there were a bunch of stuff that happened around that time that
knocked you off course?
Yeah. I love to build, right? I love to create, and that really started kind of in the 6th grade. I started farming and various things. And so for all intents and purposes, from middle school through high school, my outlet was all things agriculture. By the time I was, 16, I was farming 50 acres. I had 20 head of cattle, had a bunch of farm equipment.
Who needs to go to college when you're working? Right?
So crazy was when I was 11, when I was 11, I fell in love with tractor trailers, and I decided right then and there, when I'm 18, I'm going to start a trucking business. I'm going to start with my own truck, and then I'm going to build a business. And then from that,
how did you learn the skills? Did you learn from your family or just?
Well, so a lot of this is Pennsylvania Dutch. So it's a Swiss-German heritage, and very mechanically minded, very kind of motorheads. But motorheads not so much in a way that you either operate or that you turn wrenches. It's like you do both. It's like everything to do with something that has an engine. So I go through middle school, not good grades, but I'm certainly loving building, right? I'm loving business and loving farming. Same thing with high school. And I had ADHD, didn't know it. And so I barely made it through high school. I was 3rd from the bottom of my class. I kind of say that like a badge of honor, right?
I heard that.
Okay.
All right.
So my dad had one goal while I was in high school, and that was that I would graduate, right? He thought it was very important that I was graduate. And a handful of times where I was like, I'm done, I'm out, right? I don't need any of this. I love to learn, but I got to learn my own way. So then I took a couple classes at our local community college in the fall, and realized very quickly that was just not for me. I didn't have the patience. Bottom line was I just simply didn't have the patience for a full semester class. Learned a bunch. Really, I apply to this day. I learned stuff that I learned in community college, but that's the story.
So how did you get started on the entrepreneurial venture? And when did like a trigger go off where you said, you know what, I not only want to be a successful businessman, but there's a scorecard, which, if you're in business and you're doing well, you're accumulating capital.
The entrepreneurial trigger was when I was 10. And then from the time, basically 10 to 20, did all this experimentation, learned a ton. And probably when I was 12 or 13, I essentially became kind of the bank to my siblings. So I would go and I would work, and I would, when I was 11, I think, I worked full-time, 40 hours a week during the summer, made 40 cents an hour. The next year, I got a 20% raise, right? 50 cents an hour. I thought I was big time. But I just didn't spend any money on anything. So I always had plenty of money. And I always wanted to reinvest every penny. And I'm this way to this day. I would prefer to, it's never been about the output. It's never been like, I got to have a number and any of that stuff. I don't even like that thinking. I mean, for me, I don't like it. And it was all about creating something. And I didn't have the language at the time, but it was essentially about creating and delivering value every day for whatever customer set I was focused on.
So what would you tell your younger self if you had to write a letter with everything that you know now about the ups and downs of entrepreneurship and running a business, financial management, but particularly the ups and downs of running a business?
So number 1 is it's never as good as it seems. And number 2 is it's never as bad as it seems. That's first. Number 2 is the only constant in life is change. Number 3, if you're going to focus on, so mentoring self is a full-time job. And if you have goals, dreams, desires, hopes, 3 things that you can do to increase the probability of those being successful is improve your verbal communication, improve the quality of your verbal communication, improve the quality of your written communication, and improve the quality of your ideas. So that's the third one. The fourth one is, and I'll end with this, the fourth one has to do with, I think we call it resilience now. Back in the day, Winston Churchill was never, never, never give up, or never, ever, ever give up. And
what I like from Winston Churchill is when he said, if, when you're in hell, keep walking.
Exactly.
I want to go back to intellectual capital, which is really your growth mindset. So you're in a situation where you didn't do well in high school. You struggled because of ADHD, community college. It just wasn't for you, but you figured out a way to hack the system, which I think is really cool, which I'd love for you to talk about and what you got out of it and why it was important to you to do that.
We were granted a ton of favor from kind of call it 92 until call it 2000. Grew the business precipitously, grew the business significantly. And it was all gut. No frameworks, no financial frameworks, no operational frameworks. It was just focused today on creating a repeatable system that knocks the cover off the ball for the customer, and then do that over and over and over again.
You've mentioned this I don't want to lose it, because everything that's coming out of your mouth isn't about how much money you're making. It's how you're providing value to a customer, to a client.
Yes.
You're very value focused.
Absolutely. It is every day. It's all about, you've got to create value here and here and on a written document, right? Whether it's engineering, whether it's proposals, however, you got to create a plan, and then you got to deliver. And there's something in here, Charlie, this is a fascinating part, where it's a form of giving. I don't view it as a form of generosity, but it's like it's a way that you live out who you've been created to be, which is from the heart. How do I care for others? And our customers, a lot of the missions that we're on, they really matter. And there, a lot of them are dynamic in nature, where we may get retasked during the flight. And so you have to, in my opinion, at least I've always believed this, that you have to build a relationship with the customer in a way where you really deeply understand not just what they're saying, but what their interests are. Like, what is their objective? And then you come together relationally, deeply relationally, and you iterate on building this repeatable model and then you make sure you make sure that you recruit and hire people with similar values. And then they go get it done. And man, when you do that, you grow a business. That's the input.
Describe the type of clients that you are dealing with. And obviously, as you grow, the composition may have changed, but just give us a flavor of who are these clients that are paying you for the services that you're providing with your aircraft.
So think of defense, and then think of everybody else. We call it defense and civil. So defense would be, we've worked basically for U.S. DOD across all of the services. The mix changes from year to year, but we've got a lot of airplanes, a lot of customers there. We do surveillance and reconnaissance. It's actually called ISR, where for the customer, we collect intelligence via surveillance or reconnaissance.
So the natural question is like, well, why does the military need you? They got lots of airplanes, they have an air force. Why are they calling Mike Stoltzfus?
Yeah, because there's a whole litany of reasons. A lot of it has to do with when there's a threat that emerges, the S&T community, the science and technology community. So this is all science-based, right? We're just a truck, and I'm not diminishing what we're doing. But the issue is how do you get a sensor overhead something to collect some kind of data that you can then make a decision on? And so what we found kind of over the years is that, look, if it's 50 airplanes, then they're going to do it themselves. But if you get an engineer, what we call a 10-pound brain engineer, right? Really smart dude, who has an idea, there's a threat, he has an idea, and he then needs a platform to put that on, and he needs it right now. Like, he needs the airplane downrange in 5 months. That doesn't happen in the larger bureaucracy. And our entire system is built to respond, extraordinarily fast.
And you
to
can
that
do anything, right? So if they wanted to drop 1,000,000 mosquitoes, or they wanted to move an elephant, or whatever, or they wanted to do a counter drug interdiction, you could figure out any of those missions very quickly. 5 months.
Completely. That's our system.
Got it. Okay. So going back to how you hacked the education and the growth mindset, which I thought was very unusual
Yeah.
because people don't think about that the way
Yeah,
you did.
yeah. So by the late 90s, we bought 142 airplanes in about 24 months, levered up the balance sheet. We were a 2.77 debt to equity. Nuts. I had no idea. All I knew is we were generating cash for their customers, and the bank was happy to give us money. I had no idea what a balance sheet was. I had no idea what a P&L was. I had no idea what debt to equity was. I had no idea. None of this stuff. And so then we had 3 or 4 contracts that were putting off pretty good cash, and a whole bunch of costs changed, and our margin decreased dramatically. So then, the bank comes calling. And so I'm like, well, shucks, what are we going to do? And so long story short, I got a couple buddies, one who graduated from Harvard undergrad and another buddy who went to business school in, 82, 83. And they both told me, like, you don't know what you don't know. You desperately need, like, now, please, for the love of all that's right with the world, go now and get executive education at Harvard. Well, look, if I can tell you this, Charlie, I've not spoken with our other R360 members, but if you've not graduated from college, when you're in your 20s, you feel like you're a second-class citizen, okay? There's confidence issues, all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm not going to Harvard. They're way too smart. There's no way. And so I said, all right, finally. And then I was like, okay, fine. I'm going to do it.
What is executive education, and what program did you gravitate to?
Yeah, so executive education at Harvard, and most business schools have a component of this. It's actually quite profitable for the school. And Harvard Business School has multiple executive education programs. They've got an owner-managed group, which most of the work I've done is in owner-managed. And then they have a lot of other mid-level and senior level PE and publicly traded for folks that are in middle management, senior management. And they're across the board. They can be comprehensive management. They can be accounting, finance.
A very well-known program. What's the name?
Yeah. So first one I did was a 1-week program called Strategic Finance for Smaller Businesses with Sam Hayes. He's amazing. And we took the information from that, brought it home, applied it to the business, and dramatically changed the business. When I was there, Sam said, you need to do OPM. And I'm like, Sam, I'm too young. I'm not. I gave him all the reasons why I shouldn't. He said, no, you need to do OPM. So a year later, an OPM is owner, president, manager. You have to be president. You have to be, I was actually COO at the time, but you have to be president. You have to be some percentage of ownership. And I think there's a size of the business. I'm not sure.
And then how much time do you spend at Harvard, and what's the time commitment and the cost?
Yeah, so I go to OPM. It's a 3-year program, 3 weeks a year. And you're basically drinking from a fire hydrant 18 hours a day. You sleep 6 hours a night. It changed my life.
But you're sitting around all similarly situated owners, I assume from all over the world, that you're learning from, right? Yeah,
there's 160 of us per cohort. They are anywhere, at the time we were a very small business. We had 120 employees, and up to guys that are second, third generation that have 5,000 employees, and everything in between. So, Charlie, it is like, if there's anything that we talk about, it depends on who your listeners are. If you have listeners who are in their 20s or 30s who are trying to figure out, how am I supposed to think? I want to change my thinking because I want to grow a business.
And explain, I don't think a lot of people know what the case study method is. And explain how you're actually learning from like real cases. And many times the professors are intimately aware. Sometimes they even bring the actual people involved that sometimes are famous CEOs that screwed something up, or sometimes they figured something out.
Yeah, no, we've had anyway. So when you do an executive education program at Harvard, you're basically going to learn three ways. The first one is from your own self-study. So you receive a case study and you read it, you do a bunch of notes. That's number one. Number two is being with your peers. And with your peers, it might be something about a case, it might be something about your business, about their business, but just being with them and learning, and their peers. And then the third one is being in the classroom. And the classroom experience, when it's curated by a professor, these are Harvard Business School professors, right? These are the best in the world.
Weren't you like scared going there the first time? Like,
Well, the first time I went for the 1 week class.
Right.
And by the way, everyone, it doesn't matter what your background is. You could have a PhD. Everyone that goes to Harvard, the first day they're there, it's imposter syndrome.
Right.
No one believes they should be there.
Now they put you in a group, right? A small group, like a study group that you become friends with, and you break down the case. And I'm sure there's a science, behind that as well.
Yeah, there is. So the basic idea is you receive a case, in advance. You read it, you study it in advance. The morning of the class, you have 3 classes per day, sometimes 4. 3 classes per day, and so you then meet with your study group. Then they're like it's called a living group, and so 8 people. You go. Let's say you're going to do 3 cases that day. You spend 20 minutes and you go through the case together, and someone presents. But ultimately, what you're doing is with this small group, you're kind of experimenting with various ideas you have. You're kind of preparing to be in class. So you go through those, then you go to class. 140 people in a room. The single most important thing is in the first 10 minutes, say one thing. Then you're drawn into the conversation, and then 90 minutes total. 90 minutes later from the beginning, then the amount of learning, Charlie, that goes, the amount of learning that goes, because essentially what you're doing is you're taking the lessons from the case and you're processing what your current thinking is, what your assumptions are about life, and your assumptions are about the business, and you're juxtaposing both of those, and usually 1 or 2 or 3 thing comes out of that where you change your thinking.
Yeah, and what's interesting too is like it could be something that has no relevance to your life or your company at that time, but like 5 years later, something comes up and something gets triggered in your mind. There was that case, and I remember what I'm not going to do because I remember those like 2 or 3 things. And then you have your notes, you go back. So this was very different than community college or high school. You were actually engaged, and it was fun, and it was applicable, and you had a group, and there was pressure because I guess you either called on or you had to raise your hand and participate.
Yeah, and so you get cold called if you don't get in.
Right.
50% of the professors, they're going to cold call you. So the best thing you can do is get in early. But back to your point, what I found so fascinating was that at Harvard, by the way, Harvard Business School, that little part of the campus, it's like my academic home. It is a place where I found, extraordinarily smart, gifted professors who really wanted to invest into me, developed a lot of friendships. And then I found it was a place where you're amongst your tribe. And I didn't necessarily feel like I was amongst my tribe at community college. But you hang out with a bunch of OPMers, and
my employees, my senior management team always hated it when I went to these places because they were like, okay, what like shiny new ideas is he going to bring back that he's going to be implementing that we're all going to have to learn?
It was so bad when I started. The guys
sure.
were like, please, not again.
I'm sure you were able to transform your business.
Let me say this part really matters. Yeah. From 02, so I did the SFSB, Strategic Finance for Smaller Business, in 01. Did my first year of OPM in 02. From 02 to 2012. In 10 years, we grew the business 1,400%.
Wow.
Now, the question is why? Well, first of all, believe deeply that he's the source of everything. Now,
or she.
All boats, pardon?
Or she.
Or she. Well, okay, you're right. Okay. All right, fine. So all boats rise with the rising tide. So we were granted favor, in my opinion. We were granted favor, and we got into these markets, into these defense markets that needed our services like now. So here's the difference. In the 90s, it was all gut, and the wheels came off. From 02 to 12, we then had frameworks. And every week there would be an opportunity, there would be a decision. And our decision making, my thinking was, my neurological pathways were changed because of OPM. And you could then draw upon those frameworks. And so that 1,400% growth was a whole ton of things. Timing's everything in life, right? Whole ton of things. Without OPM, the wheels would have come off.